Hi everyone, today we're going to be taking a look at the difference between independent and dependent variables. Our first thing is understanding the difference between independent and dependent variables. So here's an example to help you better understand this. Imagine this lady decides, I can't wait to get the new BMW X5. Can she make that decision on her own, or does she have to ask someone else? Well, she's an adult, she has her own money, and she can totally make the decision for herself, which makes her an independent variable. She doesn't rely on anything or anyone else. An independent variable can stand alone, and the independent variable is the x variable in examples. Now, for example number 2, we have this little girl. She really wants to go to Disneyland. Can she make that decision on her own, or does she have to ask someone else for permission? Right, she has to ask her parents for permission. Depending on what her parents say, will determine if this child can go to Disneyland or not. That means that this child is a dependent variable. A dependent variable relies on someone or something else, and a dependent variable changes based on the independent variable. In this case, her parents are the independent variable. They determine if she gets to go to Disneyland or not. If they say yes, she gets to go. If they say no, she does not get to go. So she depends on what her parents say. The dependent variable is always the y variable. Typically, when we're trying to determine an independent and a dependent variable, we can use something called a depends statement. This helps us determine which variable is which. So something depends on something else. In this case, the child depends on her parents to determine if she can go to Disneyland or not. Next, we have to learn how to identify an independent and a dependent variable. There's some steps we can follow. Step 1, when you read a scenario, you should figure out what the two variables are. In other words, you need to figure out what two things is this problem referring to. Next, once you figure out the two variables, you can use the depends statement. Which variable depends or relies on the other? Our first blank of our depends statement is our dependent variable, which we said is always going to be the y variable. The second blank is our independent variable, or the x. Let's take a look at our first example. Cole earns 2 points for every basket he makes during his basketball game. First thing is we have to follow step 1. What two variables is this scenario referring to? It's talking about the points, and it's talking about baskets. So our variables are the number of baskets and the number of points. Let's see which ones fit into our depends statement. Do the number of baskets depend on the number of points? Or do the number of points depend on the number of baskets scored? Right, the number of points depend on the number of baskets scored. This means that the number of points is our dependent variable and the number of baskets is our independent variable. This means on the bottom there that x equals the number of baskets and y is the number of points. Let's take a look at another example. Example 2. Miss Hannah estimates the number of minutes a student will spend on homework when deciding how many problems to assign. What is this problem talking about? What are the two variables? Good. It's the number of minutes and how many problems to assign. So our variables are number of minutes estimated and the number of problems assigned. Now, which one's the dependent and which ones are independent? We should plug them into our depends statement to help us determine this. Do the number of minutes estimated depend on the number of problems assigned? Or did the example say, The number of problems assigned depends on the number of minutes estimated. Right. The example or the scenario says the number of problems assigned depends on the number of minutes Miss Hannah estimates. So in this case, y is our dependent variable, which is the number of problems assigned, and our independent variable is the number of minutes estimated, which is our x. Great job. So remember, it's y depends on x. Identifying another example, we're going to have to take a look at, again, what the two variables are, and then we can use our depend statement to determine which one's which. So here, Ahmed earns 4 points for every problem he gets correct on his math test. In this problem, it's talking about points, and it's also talking about the number of problems he gets correct. So our variables are number of problems correct and number of points. We have to determine which one is our x variable and which one's our y, or in other words, which ones are dependent and which ones are independent. So remember, the dependent is always the y. The independent is always the x. Is it the number of points depends on the number of problems correct? Or is it the number of problems correct depends on the number of points? Good. The number of points depends on the number of problems Ahmed gets correct. So in this case, we have our x variable, our independent, is the number of problems correct, and our dependent, our y variable, is the number of points. So remember, y is here, and x is here. Let's try another example. Bella creates 3 TikTok videos each day. What is this problem referring to? TikTok videos and the number of days. So our variables are number of TikTok videos and the number of days. Let's try to plug those into our depend statement. Do the number of TikTok videos depend on the number of days? Or do the number of days depend on the number of TikTok videos? Right, the number of TikTok videos depend on the number of days. So remember, y depends on x. So our x is the number of days, and the y is the TikTok videos. Let's look at one more example together. Terry always makes sure that he has 3 more chickens than sheep when he plays Minecraft. Our variables are the number of chicken and the number of sheep. So let's plug them into our depend statement. Do the number of chicken depend on the number of sheep, or do the number of sheep depend on the number of chicken? Right. The number of chickens depend on how many sheep he has. We know that we can add 3 to the number of sheep to get the number of chickens. So that means our dependent variable, which is our y variable, is the number of chickens, and the number of sheep is our x variable. Great job, you guys. Now go ahead and practice on Khan Academy and see how you do with those examples.